Good afternoon and welcome everyone. I'm Anna Scott, the Managing Director of Clean Cut, and on behalf of Clean Cut, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the second edition of Clean Cut's Future Talks at Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week Australia. Firstly, before we get underway, I'd like to do an acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge and show my respect to the elders past and present, the traditional custodians of this land on which this event takes place right now. Clean Cut was formed to support the fashion industry through raising awareness and implementation of sustainable and ethical practices. 3 years ago, we launched at Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week Australia, and since then, both Clean Cut and the whole industry has actually come a long way and grown up. Sustainability, or responsible business, is undoubtedly a global trend and is now being embraced by progressive brands across all sectors of the industry, a fact we'd like to discuss and celebrate today. Last week, the global fashion industry leaders came together in an unprecedented gathering at the Copenhagen Fashion Summit, which drew some 1,250 delegates from 52 countries. And the three key themes that emerged from that summit was collaboration, innovation and education, something we're going to hear a lot about today. Also at that summit was the Youth Fashion Summit, 116 fashion and business students from 40 countries calling for a future where profit and success is measured on more than monetary value by looking at social and environmental progress. And here today, we are creating the future of fashion in Australia by asking designers, manufacturers, brands, media, influencers, retailers, and the wider industry to collaborate on this journey of innovation and progression. The opportunities at the intersection of sustainability and fashion are numerous. Whether you're looking at your operations or your supply chain, you can save money, you can reduce your risks from your supply chain, which could actually harm your brand, but you can also contribute by creating an authentic brand with purpose, which actually contributes in a positive way to actually solve some of our social and environmental challenges. If we look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, they actually provide many opportunities to develop a brand with purpose, which contributes to whether it's reducing social inequality, protecting our water resources, and producing fashion in a responsible way. And the research tells us that customers and millennials are increasingly looking for brands which cause less harm and leave a positive impact and legacy. We know the facts, that fashion is the second most polluting industry in the world, contributes to 10% of our global carbon emissions, is actually the user of the world's chemicals by about a quarter, and it's one of the biggest users of our freshwater resources, not to mention responsible for the unsafe working conditions for millions of people. Fashion is now on a path towards steadily exerting its influence on the global and increasingly local industry and increasing consumer interest in the impact of fashion on our society. We're now exploring how we can innovate our practices and businesses to create dynamic business models, low-impact supply chains and responsible design to create fashion that we all love in a way that actually leaves a positive impact on people and the planet. It's a move towards a responsible business model and one that we applaud. Clean Cut's mission is to chart a path towards a global positive impact fashion industry. We believe that collaboration is a very vital part of this journey and invite you to join us in this discussion and actions towards this goal. We also connect Australia to the global sustainable fashion industry movement. I'd now like to introduce our panel, and firstly our moderator, Kelly Hart, to my left. Kelly is Editor-in-Chief of Harper's Bazaar Australia and Deputy Chair of the Australian Fashion Chamber. And Kelly has also held numerous high-level titles as editor and fashion editor on Australian publications and is one of the country's most influential fashion leaders. We're honoured to have her moderating here today and look forward to hearing her perspective and leading a very interesting discussion and conversation. Please welcome Kelly.
Thank you.
To Kelly's left, we have Lucy King, which is the Group Sustainability Manager for Country Road Group, which operates 4 Australian brands, Trenery, Mccall, Witchery and Country Road. Lucy is responsible for overseeing the implementation of Country Road Group's sustainability strategy and the group is on a journey to drive positive social and environmental change across its business operations and supply chain. Previously, Lucy played a key role in embedding sustainability within Woolworths South Africa, a retailer owned by Country Road Group's parent company, Woolworths Holdings Limited. Please welcome Lucy.
Thank you.
To Lucy's left, we have Sigrid McCarthy, who's the Media and Communications Coordinator at Ethical Clothing Australia, ECA. And through her work at ECA, Sigrid shares the positive stories of accredited companies valuing transparency and ethical business practices. Her role also involves educating businesses and consumers on the benefits of third-party compliance and local production, and encouraging a greater respect for garment workers. Sigrid is also the founder and editor-in-chief of Intent Journal, a publication exploring the current fashion system. Please welcome Sigrid to our panel. To Sigrid's left, we have Ramon Martin, the co-founder of Tome. Ramon is one half of New York-based brand Tome. He and business partner Ryan Lobo founded the label in 2011 with global success. In 2013, they were finalists in the CFDA Vogue Fashion Fund and are currently part of the Lexus CFDA Sustainable Initiative. Ramon and Ryan have just arrived in Sydney from the Copenhagen Fashion Summit last week, and please welcome Ramon. Before we hear the discussions from the panel today, just want to do a quick thank you and some housekeeping things. I'd also like to thank my Clean Cut colleagues who've worked tirelessly on creating, curating and delivering this event today. That's Kelly Elkin, Catherine van der Merlen and Tiana Wallace. And I'd also like to thank our principal sponsor for this event, Ethical Clothing Australia. ECA is an accreditation body that works collaboratively with Australian textile clothing and footwear companies manufacturing locally. It's a joint industry union initiative that pursues a more transparent and ethical textile clothing and footwear industry. Our other sponsors for the event today include Well Made Clothes, Dashing Print, Lush, Red Seed and Era Perez. And for those that wish to tweet about the event today, our Twitter handle is up on the screen at Clean Cut Fashion. And lastly, if you have not already done so, please turn your phones to silent if you wish to tweet, or feel free to turn them off. Thank you, and over to Kelly.
Thank you. Thanks, As I'm not a fashion designer, I thought I'd just start off talking about collaboration, especially in a magazine like Harper's Bazaar. We do it hourly, daily, by minute. Drives my staff nuts. But collaboration, I think, especially in a creative environment like in fashion, publishing, you can put out the best product if you're talking to a million minds. And that's how we work at Harper's Bazaar. You know, we had a shoot yesterday and we've got a photographer, we've got 3 assistants, we've got hair and makeup, we've got more hair and makeup assistants, we've got stylists, we've got talent, we've got managers. And, you know, there was a lot of people in the room that day, but we created magic. And I think that's what I love about collaboration, is that you are bringing people together that have different ideas, different perspectives. I talk about all the time, I'm one of the older people in the office. And I love having the water cooler conversation with my young staff, because they're tapped into things that I'm not, and I can't be across everything. So I think it's really important to speak to people. I think we were talking about before, Ramon, is sharing ideas. Mm-hmm. Even with my competitor, Edwina McCann's a really good friend of mine. We talk about things that we can, but I think, you know, sharing information, especially when you're in business, it's so important, and especially when you're in Australia as well. We've got so much potential, even more potential than we currently have. So I think if we are to develop a really strong fashion industry, the way to do it is to collaborate. So I'll leave it there. Actually, we were talking about Vivienne Westwood's quote before, so I thought I might just read it because I think it's a great way to kick off this discussion. This is Dame Vivienne Westwood. Buy less, choose well, make it last. Quality, not quantity. Everybody's buying too many clothes. So I think that's a great way to start off the conversation. So we might start with Lucy. We might just chat about what you have seen the changes in the last couple of years. I mean, how long have you worked in the rag trade and what are the changes that you've seen?
So I've been working in retail for about 5 years now. as Anna mentioned, I've only been in Australia for the last year, but I think across both South Africa and Australia, there's really been an increase in customer expectations around traceability, around transparency. They want to know where their clothes are made from, how their clothes are made, the conditions and the factories that we're making them in. And so I think with that kind of increased consumer awareness and expectations, we've really seen a shift in retailers really needing to change what they're doing to get a better understanding of what's going on in their supply chain. And I think we've seen a real shift globally. We've seen leaders like H&M and M&S really lead the way, but I think even more and more in the last sort of year or so, there's been a real shift, particularly in the Australian retail industry, around a real understanding that it makes sense to embed sustainability into your business, that there's a real need. Not only is it the right thing to do, but there's a real business case for sustainability.
And Sigrid, what about you? I mean, you're working at a different, I mean, you work for an organisation that is all about sustainability, but what are the big changes you've seen?
Yeah, I definitely think since the Rana Plaza garment factory collapse in 2013, we've seen a real increase in consumers wanting to know where the clothing is made and under what conditions. But you can't underestimate how savvy consumers are, and they want to know the real answers. And I think what's great about ECA accredited brands is increasingly they're being able to clearly communicate how they're taking credible steps to ensuring that their clothing is made ethically. We're also seeing brands sort of understand the issues inherent to unregulated outsourcing and the benefits of staying on shore and being able to oversee that production process as well. So it's great to see more brands exploring local manufacturing opportunities.
And for you, Ramona, the pointy end of fashion, you and me, the pointy end of fashion. I mean, it's hard, right? Because there's so much pressure for you to create. With H&M, and you can understand because they're creating thousands of units of a certain garment. But for you, you're not creating a lot. So what have you seen with your customer, especially what they're expecting now?
It's, I mean, we are creating a lot. We're the clock or the calendar is being turned up for fashion, high fashion, whatever you like to call it, and it's getting faster and faster. The demand is getting higher and higher. When we first set up 5 years ago, it was 2 collections a year, 2 deliveries a year, and we are sitting at about 6 deliveries a year now. So pre-collections, and then those are split across 2 deliveries. We do capsule collections. We do special editions. We do. There's always things in progress, and at any one time of the year, we're working on up to 5 collections at different points in their development or production. So before even getting to connect with our customer and say what do you want from us? What are you looking for from us? And how can we connect with you and meet your needs or your request for a sustainable garment or a sustainable practice? It's really about transparency for us internally as well. I think it speaks to really knowing where things are coming from and how they're being made and who's making them for you. That has been an education in itself of being able to slow down the process and say, even though we have all of these demands, we are going to go through we're going to do our due diligence with factories, with suppliers, and see where things come from, how they're made, and what goes into the garment.
And so, Lucy, can you speak specifically about what Country Road are doing in terms of sustainability?
Sure. So Country Road Group has spent probably about the last year or so developing a new sustainability strategy. So we recently launched that internally and with our suppliers. And really, I think the big shift for us is that previously where we spent a lot of our efforts were around sort of charity partnerships, initiatives like the Witchery White Shirt campaign supporting the OCRF, where we've also previously put a real importance around ethical standards in the supply chain. Our new strategy is really about a holistic approach to sustainability and really embedding it into every part of our business. So it's not something that's a nice to do thing on the side, but really it needs to be embedded into everyone's day-to-day roles. So going forward, the 7 key focus areas for us are ethical sourcing, sustainable farming and raw materials, water, waste, energy, social development, and then the health and wellness of our customers and people. So really we've said that those are the 7 areas that we feel we can make an impact in as a diverse retailer across not only our own business but across the rest of the Woolworths Holdings group. And so I think, yeah, for us a key shift going forward will be looking at things like sustainable fibres. We've started to explore, Witchery recently launched a range made from recycled polyester. We've recently become a member of the Better Cotton Initiative. So we're really going to be looking more and more at how we make more sort of responsible choices in the way we choose and select our fabrics.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Just 7 things.
Yeah, just 7.
Ramon, can you tell me about the CFDA Sustainable Initiative that you're involved with? Can you tell in detail and how you're involved?
It's very new. It launched, I want to say November last year, and there are 10 brands that the CFDA has brought together and composed this board of advisors that sit along with these 10 designers, and we work collectively in creating new, shaping the industry and shaping sustainability and defining it. I think that's one of the big things, the big struggles that a lot of people have, a lot of designers have, is that they don't really know what it means. They don't know where it begins and ends. They don't know how to categorize themselves. They don't know how to measure their own practices. And people are very, very scared to say that they're a sustainable brand or they practice sustainability.
Do you think that is because a few years, or probably 10 years ago, you know, that whole hemp movement came out and it was kind of, I suppose, a bit Byron Bay hippie, no offence to anyone from Byron Bay. But do you think there is that stigma a little bit with ethical fashion, that it's not high fashion?
Yeah, I think the aesthetic is one thing. And that's something that I'd like to talk about in regards to a designer's responsibility and how you approach your clothing and what you make, especially for young designers and small brands, because we are more agile and more adaptable than, say, the bigger companies out there. But I think there was a very, very high standard set without any measures in place that, because for us, for Tome, you know, we're not 100% sustainable in every, say of the list of 7, you know, key goals that you have. You know, we don't fill all of those targets. You know, it's very, very hard for us to, you know, have like, you know, set recycling rules or zero waste or any of those sorts of things, whereas ethical fashion and ethical supply chain is really, really important to us. Upcycling is a really important component for us as well. Artisan sourcing around the globe. I worked for Mayette, which I don't know if, for several years, so that was a huge learning curve for me, and how you work and the materials.
Could you explain a little bit what Mayette is?
Yeah, Mayette was actually set up at the same time that Tome was set up, so we're both 5 years old, and I worked with them for close to 4 years, consulting and designing for them. And their business model was set up on sourcing artisan workers, weavers, jewelry makers, shoemakers around the world, and funding and supporting these community of workers and taking those resources and turning them into high fashion. There were a lot of issues with that process, namely calendar. You know, it's a real big thing. Like, fashion is on such a high-speed fixed calendar at the moment that
we need buttons in 2 days.
Yeah, you need buttons in 2 days, and when you're working with, say, like Indian handcrafted, hand-carved. We were actually working with hand-carved wood buttons from Mexico that took weeks to produce, and you know, you're trying to satisfy a retail system that has very, very strict rules in regards to when you can deliver, what they'll accept after that date, the penalties that you incur, and it can be crippling for a young brand, you know, if you don't deliver on time. So these things can be intimidating. To have a supply chain that is working, an ethical supply chain or a sustainable supply chain that is working on a very, very slow calendar and doesn't meet your needs, you can feel trapped, and sometimes you have to take the next best option, or like the fastest option, which is not always the best one, so you don't lose those accounts, so so that your business itself is sustainable and you can stay in business and keep on practicing what you're doing. It is something that a lot of designers get burnt with, and the hardest thing is building the practice, is investing the years in your supply chain to cultivate that trust with whomever you're working with, the reliability as well, that you're going to get things in time, and also investing in their business. It takes time for, particularly for artisans, and we've started working with some weavers in Varanasi who I worked with at Mayet. Things go wrong there. These fabrics are being woven on the floors of their homes, and if the rains come and it floods, like, those yards and yards of fabric are gone. Like, they're just, lost to the water that comes through
Can you
their
build
mud
that into
floors.
your P&L just in case it
Yeah,
rains?
and that's the thing. And so you have to be adaptable. You have to do things in a measured way. You have to come up with a way of building on business. You can't suddenly shift to a system that is not set up for your supply, but you can invest in it and you can build it with your own company.
I'm going to come back to talk about the Copenhagen Fashion Summit.
Sure.
But Sigrid, how does Ethical Clothing Australia bring together brands and manufacturing to ensure that there's fair working conditions?
Yeah, so we work with Australian companies manufacturing in Australia. Essentially, our accreditation process maps the entire local supply chain right down to the bottom, which could be a home worker, someone working from home. Given the outsourcing nature of the local industry and the global industry, it can be incredibly difficult for companies, the principal company, to really understand who's making their clothing, whether it's been subcontracted out again. We map the entire process to make sure that it's fully transparent and legally compliant. There are issues in local industry, which is why we exist. We're here to assist businesses and help link them with makers, make sure that everyone's being treated fairly, and that Australian products can be made in Australia and made under ethical conditions as well.
So are you forced at all to do kind of the door knocking process to ensure that things are okay, like doing spot checks? And
we are a joint industry and union initiative. The accreditation program, every time a company becomes accredited, there is an third-party audit that's conducted by the Textile Clothing and Footwear Union. Every year a company needs to become re-accredited if they choose to, which then another audit is taken place. However, throughout the year in between the re-accreditation and the accreditation and the re-accreditation, if anything does change in a supply chain, a company has to let us know, so then we can ensure that the new supplier or whoever it is also
incredibly thorough.
Yes, but we do pride ourselves on doing what we do really well.
Yeah. And Lucy, can you talk about some of the businesses that Country Road works with, and how important those relationships are, and how you've developed them, and what the ongoing trend is at Country Road?
So I think in the last year with the Baptist World Aid Australian Fashion Report, it's driven quite a bit of sort of momentum in the local retail space, but also a lot of engagement and collaboration. So following the report that went out in 2015, the Baptist World Aid, Stop the Traffic, and a number of other organisations pulled the Australian retailers together to run a number of fashion forums. So we've attended one on the living wage. We've attended another one where we as retailers have come together to discuss traceability. And really, I think we see it being important because some of these issues like the living wage and traceability are a lot bigger than us as one retailer. There's obviously things that we can do to achieve change in our own supply chain, but if we as a group of retailers come together to solve some of these challenges, we're going to have a lot more impact in the long run. I think for us as well, a big or an important part of collaboration is not only collaborating with other retailers, but also NGOs, organizations that have expertise that we don't necessarily have. So
can you give us an example of some of those things?
Yeah, so the Better Cotton Initiative, as I mentioned earlier, is one of those organisations. Canopy, who do a lot of work around cellulose and removing deforestation from the cellulose supply chain. We've also started engaging with water stewardship to look at how we can drive better use of water in the supply chain. And there's a number of organisations that have a lot of expertise in areas that we don't have expertise in, and I think it's about coming together and bringing your strengths to the table, and again achieving so much more change if you actually bring those strengths together. So, and then I think again it's not only collaboration with businesses, not only collaboration with NGOs, but of course with our suppliers, and then also with our customers. And I think for us, part of our new strategy is really understanding how we can help our customers live more sustainable lifestyles as well. So one of our programs, the Country Road Fashion Trade Program, is all around customer clothing recycling, and really partnering and collaborating with our customers who also have an impact in their day-to-day life. So
it's a lot going on. So I'm thinking that the Copenhagen Fashion Summit is like the Met Ball of environmental summits, yeah?
It was pretty big.
Was it? Can you tell us a little bit about it? Who was there? What was, the key discussion points?
The lineup was incredible. It was, Edwina was there, and Vanessa Friedman from New York Times, Renzo Rosso, who was Diesel. Now I'm trying to think who.
Princess Mary?
Yeah, Princess Mary was there, she was hosting. Amber Valletta, who has Master and Muse, I don't know if anybody knows of that. It's her sustainable line as well. Derek Blasberg hosted. Imran Khan from Business of Fashion. And everybody spoke to basically why it's so challenging in the high fashion world to be a sustainable brand. People spoke to the calendar and the demand out there of fashion, and I think going back to the Vivienne Westwood.
I'm going to use that all the time in the office. The calendar.
Bandana from Indian Vogue spoke beautifully about displaced workers and the importance of working with artisans and these people who are working from their homes. 60% of that workforce is women in India, and removing them from their homes to work in different cities or different places. The displacement of those workers actually undermines those communities, and it breaks down the community structure that is built on artisan commerce. So what's so interesting about a conference like that is the amount of information that is out there that you don't think is out there. You don't know how to access. You don't know who to ask. And further to collaboration, that's exactly what collaboration stands for, Ryan and myself. It's really an opportunity to connect with a different designer, a different leader in the industry, and say, what do you know about this? What can we share? And this is what we know about this. This is what we're doing. So where is the crossover? Where do we learn from each other? How do we build a team of people or a group of people that will have greater influence rather than working as individuals alone? That is exactly what the Lexus Fashion Initiative is with the CFDA as well. We've brought together all these people, such as Christy Kaler, who's former Mayette and was a colleague of mine. We have Amber Valletta on the board, Olivia Wilde. I'm trying to think of who else is on the board. But actually a fellow Australian as well, Timo, who teaches at Parsons School about zero waste and recently wrote a book. And it's really about taking the time to sit together and say, this is what I have, this is what I know, these are the suppliers that I work with, what do you got? It's like trading cards on the playground like kids do. It really is about sharing information, and I think the time of when a designer was precious about their design work and it was all veiled in secrecy, and you wouldn't share contacts, and you wouldn't share, like, those days are gone. They're of no advantage to young businesses that do not have the sway in the pool that, the H&Ms or the, Zara's of the world do. We do actually have to form a group to have that influence out there.
I had lunch recently. I was very privileged to have lunch with Francois Henry Pinault, and he was talking about what Kering's doing in terms of, but even for a big company like that, I think one of their biggest challenges was finding was with the gold sourcing and ethical gold. And
right.
Because I think at first the price was so high that they couldn't do it, because obviously that cost would get passed on to the consumer. So they had to work really hard. So, I mean, for smaller businesses, very challenged, right? Even Country Road in terms of, there's challenges, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's why, I know I've mentioned it already, but the Better Cotton Initiative for us is such an exciting organisation to work with, because they're really starting to sort of challenge some of those constraints around organic and fair trade, which are still obviously really great standards, but helping us to kind of solve some of those challenges around a premium and making ethical fashion more affordable and more attainable.
Sigrid, how important is transparency too for businesses in terms of ethical fashion?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important, not just from a supply chain perspective, but also in terms of sharing challenges and sharing makers. The Australian industry is very small here. A lot of brands do manufacture here, but aren't necessarily willing to share those contacts and say, actually, I work with this person on this level, and so forth. So we really encourage brands to share information and to learn from each other. I mean, you look at the accredited brands that we have at the moment, we've got about 90 accredited, and some of them are the most iconic Australian labels, that are so celebrated, but people don't necessarily know that they're on this journey and that they are, taking incredible steps to ensure that their products have been made locally and under ethical conditions. I mean, we have Jets here today who's on our committee, also Q Clothing, R.M. Williams. These brands, people know, and they know because they produce a high quality product, which is, the industry is design-led. It'll always be design-led. That's what makes it so great. But it's so great to see these brands producing a high quality product that's also aesthetically pleasing and ethical. Yeah.
Integrity is key, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mon, can you speak to integrity? And we were talking about it earlier that obviously you look at your entire business, it'd be great to have everything sustainable, everything ethical, but the integrity is key, and to be honest about what is working and what's not.
Yeah, I think it's important not to be intimidated of the challenge of moving your business more and more towards a sustainable goal. And perhaps, a lot of businesses I don't think speak to that because it's a work in progress. It's not something that is, it's a 6-month plan and you flip your business and it's done. You have a whole new system set up. For us, for Ryan and myself, it's about decision making on a daily basis. And I think it's been the most empowering thing for the two of us of being able to stop ourselves and say, okay, every day we're making hundreds, perhaps thousands of decisions about, what's this collection going to be? What are we going to cut this dress in? What are we going to, how are we going to deliver this to this person? Or whatever those decisions are. And I think you have to stop yourself and say, is this the best possible way I could be doing this? We started asking those questions about 3 years ago, when we partnered with Katie Ford, who has Freedom for All Foundation. Freedom for All Foundation is a umbrella charity, if you will, that works with 8 different charities and foundations around the world that work, that fight human trafficking and slavery. Now, we had a personal connection with Katie, and we really wanted to become involved, so we launched a small capsule collection that we do each season, and all profits donated to Freedom for All. Now, the biggest wake-up call for us was that in our first meeting with Katie, she came to the studio and she was like, before we do this, is your supply chain above board? Is it ethical? Do you know that everybody that is making these shirts and all your clothing, all your supplies, are they free workers? Are they being paid minimum wage? Are they working in working conditions that are to standard, above board? And we kind of had to go through our whole supply chain and be like, is this how we want to make clothing? Is this right? And that sort of set that whole practice up of being able to stop ourselves and say, okay, is this the way we want to make clothing? And it really sprung out of the fatigue that we had with making so much clothing, and both of us working in the industry for so long, I think you get a little bit tired, and you need to be inspired all over again. And this is really the new challenge for design. I mean, fashion is there's everything out there. There's nothing that you can't buy at any given price point. So how do you find the next chapter in fashion of something that expresses the time and the culture of any given period in our history? And this is it. This is what is going to speak to generations to come, to say, like, this is what fashion was in the early 2000s. In the early 2000s, it wasn't about high hemlines or a miniskirt or whatever it was back in the day. It was about changing the way we make clothes.
I think it's questioning too. I won't name the retailer, but recently they were selling kids' t-shirts, for back-to-school t-shirts, for $3, and I think they probably put it out there, thought, fantastic, it's a lost leader, we'll get thousands of mums and dads into store. But in actual fact, there was backlash, because how can you create a t-shirt for $3? Okay, and I think for big companies especially, I mean, there is a responsibility, isn't there? And where do you think that future is with you can't sell a t-shirt for $3 in Australia. You just can't. I think people question where that's come from. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that documentary called The True Cost, I love the title of that, because at the end of the day, you do question, what is the true cost? What is the true value of a piece of clothing? And we often forget about where that t-shirts come from and all the people that have been involved in the production of that t-shirt. But I think, again, it is a bit of a balance, and it's a hard sort of balance for a retailer. At the end of the day, we do also need to deliver on the expectations of our stakeholders. And I think, again, I mean, we've spoken quite a lot about it's a journey. We're all on the journey. I think also we're part of a bigger fashion industry. And again, it's sort of a journey as a whole industry, not just one retailer, in sort of getting our head around some of these issues.
I love what Ramon said, that the 2000s are going to be remembered for ethical fashion rather than the hemline and the shoe. Sigrid, have you seen an increase in membership, like the interest in Ethical Clothing Australia?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say in the past 2 to 3 years in particular, we've seen an increase in inquiries, both from an emerging designer level and also from the higher profile, more established brands. Definitely from the emerging point of view, brands are starting to start up and want to set the guidelines from the get-go, the foundations. They want to know that when they start their business, they're doing it on the right footing, and they're making credible steps to ensuring that they're doing the right thing. They're looking to produce locally, because there are so many benefits, smaller runs, ensuring that being able to foster relationships with local makers, oversee the production process, quality control. So not just an increase in accreditation inquiries, but also an increase in just manufacturing referrals, people wanting to look for local makers.
Yeah. Can we talk about wastage? I think it's that is a big concern, isn't it, for the fashion industry? I think if you have a 50% sell-through, that's pretty good, isn't it? But then you've got 50% of
it's pretty good. Depends on who your retailer is out there. Sometimes they're not satisfied with that either.
But then you've still got 50% of the collection, right? And I think that is the concern, isn't it? That
where does
we're
it go?
Producing too much.
Is the question. Like, where does it all end up? Where does it go?
Where does it end up?
That's the thing. I
Is
can't tell you. I mean, I can tell you where our, the stock that we have.
Can you talk to that?
You know what we did? We with the last collection, we started upcycling all our stock, all our dead stock. So we started reconstituting all the shirting and the dresses, and giving them to the team and letting them cut them up and put them back together, and turning pants into tops or whatever it was. But also using dead stock of fabric, which is a huge amount of waste in the industry as well. And there's, for a production run of any given collection, there's about 20% wastage that we 20 to 25% wastage that we try to account for. in our ordering. So that's 20% more fabric that we're buying, or more plastic buttons, or more whatever it is on top of it that normally doesn't get used. It sits there, it gets thrown aside. There are recycling initiatives in New York for fabrics as well, but there's a lot of dead stock out there that we know that we use internally, but for other retailers, it's a big question mark of where it goes. What we have started doing is there are a lot of jobbers, what they call jobbers in New York.
A jobber?
A jobber, who are the people that collect like dead stock, either fabrics or clothing as well. I'm glad somebody's fanning themselves up there because I'm really warm too. What you can do and what we've been doing, there's actually a few places in New Jersey that we found, in California, Fresno, that they buy like the dead stock of shirting licenses for Ralph Lauren and Calvin Klein, and these are like men's shirts and sweaters and things like that that have never been worn, are still tagged, have been thrown out of the stores, and everything is, thank you.
A bit of a win machine for you.
Everything is broken up into quality and standard and things like that, and then they're sold off for either shipped off to foreign countries for dead stock that's sold to third world countries, or turned into mattress stuffing or whatever it is, and you can go in and you can buy these goods. Which is what we've started doing. So we've started doing this with denim. We have a denim component that we launched 2 seasons ago. We're going into our third now. And working with a supplier in LA that has just a ton of Levi's and Gap dead stock that has changed our process as well. We've had to sit down with our team, and our creative team and for most design brands, their creative team is their design team, and we sit there, we sketch, we choose fabrics, we work on collection and do all those sorts of things, and then that creative process stops after showtime, then it goes into production. And production is about replicating the goods to the best that we can in order to get it to the customer so they buy what they saw on the runway. For us, we've had to change this process where our production team is now a creative team. We have people that would just execute before, but now they have to go in and they have to look at this dead stock and choose the correct colors of denim to be able to replicate what we made from using dead stock or replicated denim that we bought in charity stores in New York. The cutting process, it's not an industrial process anymore. It's piece by piece that needs to be unpicked and put back together. So it's a much more artisanal approach into what we're doing. The price point in denim is nowhere near the price point of denim that you find in the local market. I mean, these are really expensive jeans. And the response has been overwhelming. People have loved what we've done without even hearing the message. And I think this is the biggest thing for designers the biggest wake-up call for us is the responsibility is ours. If you can put together a great product using resources that are sustainable, and your customer doesn't even know about it or isn't even aware about it, you're a successful designer. You've done really, really well. You have problem solved the design question of how do we do things better.
Can I add to that, sorry? Yeah. I just think dead stock is a really interesting issue, and talking to our accredited brands, some of the comments that they do make is that staying on shore and being able to sort of test smaller runs and test a vest or whatever it is before going ahead and doing 1,000 units, 2,000 units ensures that they're not left with dead stock. I heard a quote a while ago which I'll never forget, is that even if something's made from organic cotton, it's 100% waste if no one wants to wear it. I think it's so important to sort of meet the demand and not be producing these huge scale runs that end up just sitting there going to landfill or wherever it is.
Yeah. Lucy, can you speak to that? Because obviously with Country Road, it's a very big organisation.
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned the Country Road Fashion Trade Program for customers. So similarly with our clothing, we donate it to the Red Cross. So they then resell it in their op shops around the country to support the work that they do.
Years ago, I used to love that when the Qantas pyjamas first came out, you'd see a few homeless people around Sydney with the Qantas pyjamas on. I thought that was really good recycling. I don't know if Qantas did though. if you were to say to, I'm sure there's any young designers in the. Okay, fantastic. Few. I mean, what would you, 2 points, what were the 2 main points that you'd say about, you know, developing a really successful, ethical, sustainable business?
I think choose. I have multiple actually.
That's why I only gave you 2.
Yeah, I know. But pick
here.
your mission. Pick your mission. You know, start with that first goal, because there's so many things that lead on to the next goal and the next goal, and you build a business and all those sorts of things. But like, you know, have a mission. Just say like, this is what we're going to do. This is going to be part of my practice. And no matter how hard it is, or even if I don't have a single contact at the moment, like, this is what I want to do. Say it out loud, manifest it, like go out there, and those contacts will turn up, those people will come out of the woodwork, and you'll be surprised once the more and more you talk about it, the more ears it lands on, and the more connected you'll become with trying to satisfy that mission of yours. And so whatever it is, whether it's ethical, whether it's zero waste, whether it's eco-friendly yarns, however you want to approach it, just say, this is how I'm going to start, and chase it, and share it. It's really, really important as a young designer. You know, we have a very small team, and Ryan and I always make sure that we sit down with whatever development that we're looking at right at the beginning of that process, and saying, guys, this is what we're going to do this season. This is what we're going to try. So everybody open up their ears, start talking to everyone you know, ask friends in the industry, ask whoever it is, and bring things to the table, because it is a group effort. You're not going to do it on your own.
Sigrid, what
Yeah,
would you say?
I would add to that. I would say reach out to the people that have more experience than you do. ECA, you know, we have all these tools and resources for brands manufacturing here. You know, we help people navigate their legal obligations. Some of this stuff can be quite daunting, and creatives in particular don't necessarily know, you know, the legal side of things or the business side of things. So we are here to assist you. Yeah, we are here to assist you. And you know, I think it's really an exciting time for the industry. We're seeing much more collaboration and openness to talk more about it. I would love to see our brands talking to other people and share their experiences and tell them what's worked, what hasn't, yeah, the challenges that they've overcome, why third-party compliance for them is valuable to their business, how they've communicated that as part of their business story to customers, and how that's benefited them in the long run.
Lucy?
I think it can obviously be overwhelming when you try to solve all of the complex issues in one go. So you joke about our 7 focus areas. And so I think, yeah, you do need to prioritize, and I think start by building the foundations. So do you have a social and ethics policy? Do you have an environmental policy? Do you, you know, start by making sure that sort of the basic level of compliance is in place with your first-tier suppliers. That's a really good place to start. And from there, everything that you do is an add-on to that. And rather start there than, you know, run away and try to solve all of the problems and get completely sort of confused and sort of, I guess, frustrated, because it does take time and it is a journey, and you have to start somewhere.
And the storytelling. Can we talk about the storytelling? Because we were talking about that before, how important it is. I mean, you're talking about the denim. I mean, that's a great story. I mean, when a customer walks into the store, they've got half an hour, they need a pair of jeans. Do you let some customers just come in and buy it because they love it, or how important is the storytelling?
Yeah, each customer is going to experience the brand and the products, you know, as they want, and you know, the most important thing is to be clear about your story and be able to say, you know, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're doing it. And for those who are interested in what you're doing, you know, that it will resonate. It's, you know, the storytelling is important because the brand is beyond a product now. I think for a very long time it was, you know, just about like having a certain product from whatever the fashion label was, and that was enough. But people buy into a brand now, or buy fashion to be a part of the story of that brand. So who you are and how you work and the people that you have around you, and basically the soul. Ryan and I always talk about the soul of the company. We always talk about our soul, and you know, what is our emotional responsibility with what we're making in clothing. Like, you know, how will the women that buy our clothes and wear our clothes, how will they feel in these clothes? You know, like, what will they respond to beyond whether it fits well, or, you know, like, you know, they look great going to a party and all those sorts of things. So that soul speaks to speaks to the sustainability messaging that we're doing. You know, that's a really important part of who we are as a brand, and that's what people are buying into.
And Lucy, you're South African, and you've been in Australia for how long?
For a year.
For a year. So what, I mean, as an outsider coming in, I mean, what is happening, do you think, in Australia at the moment from someone that's just stepped into the market?
I think literally over the last year I've seen a huge amount of improvement, and I guess just a real willingness from the Australian retailers to really look at what we're all doing and really start to, I guess, put our heads together around some of these bigger issues like living wage, traceability. As I mentioned earlier, there's been a huge amount of engagement. I think the Baptist World Aid report has really driven a lot of that engagement and collaboration. So I think I've been really impressed to see how many retailers here just in the last year have really started taking on some of these issues and really starting to challenge their own businesses and supply chain.
And Sigrid, how do, I mean, obviously, it talks to a point that how do you collaborate with the industry? I mean, how do you actually go about it? I mean, it's a big industry and it's a growing industry. So.
Yeah, I think it is, while it is a small industry, it is an exciting small industry, and there's a lot going on here. And today is a great example of us collaborating with industry and trying to generate this dialogue and get the main players in the same room. Like, there's no point preaching to the choir. Some people have been interested in this space for a really long time, but for us, we want it to be an industry standard. So we're trying to appeal to the wider network and get people to see it as being just good business, to know what's going on in your supply chain. I don't think brands can continue to operate without understanding who's making their clothing and under what conditions. So going forward, we would love to see more collaboration during Fashion Week in particular, but also throughout the entire year in the media, among consumers, with government, at a university level as well. I think is really important to have it as a core part of teaching to students. So when they come out of university, they understand the issues, they understand the benefits of going down a certain path and doing business the right way.
And it is back to business, isn't it? Doing it the right way. But it's a big challenge. Like, you can't turn some companies around overnight. Can you? I mean, Lucy, can you speak to this? Because I mean, big companies, it's hard. You know, this is the way we do it. It works. We make a lot of money doing it this way, and to change things, it's expensive, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, for us, the big shift is making this part of everyone's day-to-day responsibilities, and it obviously takes time to educate, to engage the entire organisation. And I think, it is a journey, and change definitely takes time.
Was there sorry?
I was just going to add something to that. I also think it's important to consider the costs involved in turning a blind eye as well, and not sort of jumping on board this journey. We love our brands. Some of them include the ECA accreditation as an integral part of their business story that they communicate to customers. Like Q Clothing often has a My Window display that celebrates their Australian-made production and their accreditation. But on the other side, we have brands like Colours and Paddy, Bianca Spender, that don't use it at all in their marketing. They just see it as good business. So going forward, I think we'd love to encourage brands to really see there are risks in not managing a supply chain, and there are these amazing brands that are commercially successful that are managing the risks and taking credible steps to ensure that their business is operating ethically as well.
Yeah, I wonder why Carla and Bianca don't celebrate it. Is it because it's just such an Australian brand? Have you had that discussion? I'll have the discussion.
I wouldn't want to talk on her behalf, but I think...
We'll talk later. I'll go and talk to Carla after.
Yeah, let me know.
Was the atmosphere in Copenhagen optimistic, or was it, we're on the right track, or we've still got so long far to go?
Definitely, it's definitely an optimistic outlook. It's hard work. It's a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of shifting of mindsets. For the designer in that system of things, and we keep on saying supply chain, and that has been the biggest thing of Ryan and I trying to sort of like break that psychology of like, when you're a young designer and you step into the fashion industry, and you know you're a very small fish in a very big pond, and you kind of accept how things are done, and you know like you just want to get into the system. You just want to, you know, like you want to be able to show at Fashion Week. You want to be able to you know, sell in David Jones. You want to be able to get through all those, you know, get over all those hurdles, that you're willing to accept things as they stand and just try and make them work, you know, just try and win that race that you get dropped into. And the biggest thing that we've been getting our head around is like, how do you change supply chain? How do you say, okay, the way things are done, how that process is dictated is coming from us. We are the central figure design is a central figure in the supply chain process. So we don't step into the arena and say, okay, well these are our fabric suppliers and that's how they work and these are their terms and that's their system, so we're just going to have to accept that and buy those goods and try and fix them at our point and then like hand that over to the customer to carry that mantle of sustainability. It can't work like that. You have to decide, we're going to change the system and we're going to set up a supply chain that works for our business and our mission, and we're going to start questioning everybody that comes to the table with whatever goods or services that we're going to interact with and say, like, how did you make this? Where did this come from? You know, how much transparency do you know about your own product that you're trying to sell me that in turn I'm taking and turning into a dress and then selling to my customer? You have to be tough. You know, you have to be really, really tough. And there are people out there. You know, you start to connect with people, you start to talk with people, and we've had a really fantastic thing that just happened in the last couple of weeks where an organic cotton supplier read an article about us and White Shirt Project and Freedom for All Foundation, and they've decided to come on board and sponsor us with the capsule collection. And that's a huge thing. So you do have people in the supply chain that have the same passions and mission that you do. You just need to put your hand up and say, I'm here. And that goes back to being vocal about things. I think for Carlos and Patty and Bianca Spender, I think they're just making really smart decisions about their business, but there's nothing wrong with standing up and saying, this is how we do it and this is why we do it, because it'll help you connect with the people that want to do the same thing out there.
And I was going to chat to Sigrid too, just about, I suppose, you know, a lot of fashion is produced in third world countries. So do you think, it's almost like the anti-smoking lobby, do you think that it's going to get to that, well hopefully it does, to that stage where enough people say I'm not buying it unless it's created that way? Because obviously that's the challenge too. You're manufacturing in countries where there's corruption and poverty and it's very hard.
Yeah, what makes ECA so unique is that we operate in a country that has rigorous legal frameworks under which our accreditation program operates. So it can be a lot harder in places such as Bangladesh that don't have those sorts of legislations, and you know there isn't such a strong union over there. So yeah, it's incredibly difficult, and I don't think the solution is to tell people to, you know, boycott clothing made in Bangladesh. That's definitely not the solution. The issue is to encourage brands to pursue ways of ensuring that they're paying a living wage, and that the companies that they're outsourcing to, well, the factories, you know, of a certain standard, and the workers are being treated fairly. But that said, it's incredibly complicated, which is why, again, we do encourage people to pursue local manufacturing opportunities, just because it's still tricky, but it's, you know, there are so many benefits of having it a bit closer to home and sort of having the relationship with those makers, knowing exactly where the factories are. As a business, it can be difficult to know where it is, and so I think that's why third-party compliance is so important, because especially when you're communicating to customers, you can't really give yourself an internal tick and expect a customer to be like, oh, yep, cool, so you're good, that's all great. We do really see value in third-party compliance, and important sort of, we feel we play like a really important role in local industry here.
Yeah. And Lucy, I didn't ask you about the storytelling at Country Road. I mean, how do you promote the sustainability and the ethical work that you're doing?
So I think, again, for us, it's still early days, and we hope to tell a lot more stories in the future. If I think of two sort of initiatives that we've recently done, Mccall have a long-term partnership with the ethical fashion artisans. They've produced a range of collections made by Kenyan artisans, and really with the whole aim of empowering women through fair work opportunities. And then Trenery recently launched a limited edition range of Pachatuti Panamas made through Pachatuti, which is a fair trade organization in South America. So those two ranges have been received really well, and the storytelling has been so important in really bringing those products to life, showing the customer where they're made, showing the women behind the products, and the feedback we've received from customers has been really positive.
And I think I'd like to end on asking everyone their biggest achievement, they think. I mean, it's, you know, you're doing amazing work, but what do you, pat your back, what is the biggest achievement you think? I mean, it's quite incredible from, you know, an Australian brand that's now a global brand and a world leader in this area. Maybe that's what your achievement is, have I just...
Yeah, you just said it.
Yeah.
I mean,
do you want me to come back to you?
Yeah, maybe you have to in like a couple of years' time, maybe. But I think it's being able to own what you do. I think that's been the greatest achievement for Ryan and I, of being able to say these are the components of our company. This is our practice. This is what we're going to work towards, and setting those goals and being able to meet them and be innovative and open to new ways of doing business and new ways of making clothes. That's been the biggest thing. I mean, I think as a young designer, you go in and you have this vision or you have this idea of who you are and what your product is, and you really have to break that mold. You really have to go out there and find the right resources that inspire you because of not only what they make, but the way they make it, and then create your brand around that. Don't be so fixed. As soon as you break past what you expect of yourself, then you'll have, I think, the greatest design surprises out there for your brand.
And Sigrid, what's been the greatest achievement for...
Oh, I'm incredibly proud of working for an organisation that sort of takes great measures to ensure that the future of the industry is both transparent and ethical. I'm also really proud to work with some of the more progressive Australian fashion companies that see such benefit in doing business the right way, have been doing so for years. We're together strengthening local industry and ensuring that, you know, we do continue to manufacture here and we continue to produce a product that is world recognised as being a high quality product and a product that has been made ethically as well. So yeah, it's exciting.
Final word.
I think for us, one of our biggest achievements to date has been the high ethical and social standards that we have upheld in our supply chain for a number of years. And I think, if I can add a second thing, just the sort of the shift that we've taken in our way of thinking about sustainability in the last year, that again, it's really for us, it's a holistic approach, and I think it's really exciting for me that we have started to think about sustainability as an opportunity to innovate, an opportunity to differentiate ourselves as a brand. And yeah, just to really think about sustainability differently as an organisation.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Kelly. Can I ask you to thank our panel, please? Just wanted to go over a couple of takeouts from that session. Fantastic discussion, everyone. The words we're hearing: collaboration, what can you share, how can you build a team? I love that one, Ramon, about designers are problem solvers. It's true, there is so much power. For the designers in the room here today, you actually have so much power in the palm of your hand, really, in terms of what you design. So we can talk about shifting supply chains, but designers actually make a lot of decisions and they actually can influence in terms of what happens in the supply chain. Asking questions, again, that theme came out very strongly. How do we make this? Where does this come from? And also connecting with other people and organisations out there. On that note, what we're seeing across other sectors, if we look outside of fashion for a moment, sort of, out of the bubble, let's look at what's happening in other industries, whether it's the built environment, consumer goods, food and agriculture. Pretty much around the world, everyone is collaborating on this issue. If you look at the major non-government organisations and agencies, there is a lot of work being done globally in terms of getting the major players together, getting the small, medium enterprises together, designers, etc., to work out actually how to solve this problem, because it actually is a design challenge in a way, really. So what we're knowing is globally this is happening, and it's actually getting a lot of fantastic partnerships and collaborations, all these connections happening with all these other organisations. So I think what we're starting to see here locally, which is fantastic, but an increase in the level of collaboration. And we're hoping that with the future talks today, because that is one of the reasons that we actually wanted to get the future talks underway last year, was really to get collaboration started, to really look about how can we actually future-proof this industry that we really love. So what I'd like to do is actually invite you to continue the conversations. We actually are going to the Mercedes-Benz Star Lounge for drinks. We have that till 5 o'clock actually, and please come and continue conversations you've already started. Come and speak to the Clean Cut team and hear about some of the work that we're doing. And also on your way out, over to my right here, we also have a personalised notebook from Dashing Print. Thank you, Dashing Print. So please collect your personalised notebook before you leave the room today. Thank you. Thanks to our panel again.